It took me a while to think about where to begin. And I don't mean with the story. I've never seen such a divisive show have so much to be said about it. How could this magical girl anime be so split with its own fanbase? How can I even talk about it at all? Okay, so if you just happen to come across this video, then first off, welcome. Second, I'm not really an anime guy. The only ones I talked about on this channel were ones that came from supporter requests. However, this is the first I'm doing on my own. I apologize ahead of time. This anecdote might be a bit long, but for good reason. I think it's important to know where I'm coming from when I talk about this show. I'm a fan of tokusatsu, not particularly anime, but I am open to watching something different. Back in early 2013, a little show called Kamen Rider Gaim was announced. A new season of Rider is usually hyped up, but what stood out this time was that the season was based on Fruits and Samurai. What else stood out was the writer himself, Gen Urobuchi. I've heard the name a couple of times before then, but people were fast to say, "Oh no, it's the Uro Butcher." That's when I heard of Puella Madoka Magica. It's a magical girl anime. And that's it. No one ever told me anything past that, except that it's not your typical anime. I didn't bother to find out more since again, I wasn't into watching that stuff. By the end of Gaim, I knew that there was something to Urobuchi. A story of despair but with a shining bit of hope. And some huge turns along the way. Then, that was that for me. I thought Gaim was a fantastic show, but I never thought about Madoka Magica again. Until recently. For some reasons best not said here, my next History of Kamen Rider video was chosen to be Kamen Rider Gaim. That's when I did my usual research and remembered that one magical girl anime everyone kept bringing up, the one that was constantly compared to Gaim. Urobuchi did write a lot before and after Madoka Magica, including visual novels, movies, and other critically acclaimed anime like Fate Zero, as well as anime from other franchises such as Godzilla Monster Planet. Okay, that actually explains a lot more than I realize. I was rewatching Gaim anyway, so I figured that I should watch another Urobuchi written show to understand certain themes and concepts better. In a way, I wanted to delve into the mind of this writer, and how his past works influenced one of my favorite Kamen Rider shows. Before I started episode 1 of Madoka, I posted to Twitter that I was gonna watch, and I got plenty of responses, including the usual, "Oh, you're in for a wild ride." I'll get to that image later. So normally at this point in my videos, I do an in-depth recap going episode by episode, and generally giving my thoughts towards the end and sprinkled in between. However, this time, there is no recap. At least how I originally did them. This is one of the rare times where I say, please, 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 watch the show. At least its first 3 episodes. I did put a spoiler warning in the beginning, but this really is meant more to look at Madoka Magica as a whole, rather than me just telling you the story in my personal review. From this point on in the video, I won't give any spoiler warnings. Just please, watch at least the first 3 episodes or the whole show. If you don't care about spoilers, then I will at least review the show anyway. With that said, let's continue. One of the main things I've heard was, OMG, it looks like a cutesy magical girl show, but it's really not. I did understand that statement, but on the immediate surface, it didn't look like a magical girl show to me. I've watched Pretty Cure because I'm making videos on them, so that aesthetic comes to mind. You know, the super colorful style that pops out with plenty of pinks and a super shiny transformation sequence like from Sailor Moon. Even before I can compare to other shows, Madoka Magica looks gloomy. The very first scene is filled with grays and darker shadings. If someone wanted me to be shocked knowing that this isn't your typical magical girl show, then I didn't start out that way. The key art to Madoka Magica seems pretty different too. Our titular character Madoka has a pink dress. That's familiar, though everything else still doesn't have your typical colors. But okay, I can move past the different aesthetics, since that alone should have your mind go in a certain direction. Like a feeling that something is off. Madoka Kaname is your common pink-haired protagonist with a loving family. Then she meets a new girl at school, Homura Akemi, who acts extremely serious. But a weird thing is that Madoka feels like she's met her in a dream. Or something. The basic plotline shows itself when Madoka and her friend Sayaka meet a cute little creature named Kyubey, who wants them to make a contract and become magical girls. Aw, listen to that cute ending theme. The artwork of Madoka and Sayaka is cute too. Actually, let's talk about cuteness. I know that sounds weird, but trust me, there's a point I'm getting at. I mentioned earlier that Madoka Magica looks different with darker colors, but that doesn't take away that the show actually looks kinda cute. Madoka, Sayaka, Kyubey, and even Homura have adorable designs. If it wasn't for the contrasting colors, I'd say they could work in any other magical girl show. Kyubey especially. One more character you should know is Mami Tomoe. She saved Madoka and Sayaka when they were trapped in a surreal world while chasing after Kyubey. Homura stood out design-wise to me because again, contrasting darker purples and blues, while Madoka has brighter pinks. However, Mami stands out to me in other ways. Sure, her yellow colors are cute, but her design looks off. Those half-closed eyes stare into my soul. Her smile, while warm, almost seems like a warning. There was something off about her from the moment I saw her on screen. That's not to mention the other world, a labyrinth where a witch resides. This is where the colors show their true form. I'm a huge fan of abstract art and eldritch horrors, so seeing this gorgeous scenery made me feel something that I'll get back to. All of what I'm saying circles back to the cuteness. The character designs are cute, the artwork is cute, even the monsters, I think, are cute. This is when I finally knew what people meant about the show being different. Episode 1 sets up how Madoka and Sayaka are thrust into the world of magical girls, but episode 2 leads that into them questioning it. Mami warns them of the dangers of being a magical girl. It may seem fun fighting witches, but this is more like a curse. One that Mami says only leads to death. Yeah, okay, I get it. When I first started, that might have been the best way to put my thoughts together. Yeah, I get what they're going for. The colors are darker, but Madoka is bright pink. Look at how cool Mami is when fighting in a labyrinth. But wait, being a magical girl is actually not cool at all. Isn't Kyubey so adorable? Isn't Homura so cold? Homura is such a meanie. Magical girls are supposed to be the symbol of friendship, but it turns out they fight each other because they need resources from witches. Oh man, isn't this world wacky? Oh look, Mami has a tragic backstory, and now she finally has friends. Oh. Okay, so a common criticism I hear, and not just about Urobuchi, is that death doesn't automatically add depth to a story. If anything, shock value and reliance on a character's death makes the story seem shallow, or trying too hard. While yes, I can agree with that, context is also important, as well as the execution. Oh my gosh, I just realized that's a pun. I've been going back and forth too much on Mami's death. On one hand, it kind of adds to the pretentiousness I felt earlier. Wasn't it sad that Mami finally made friends but then died? On the other hand, I couldn't help but actually feel sad for the character. I could say it's pretentious all I want, but the impact was probably exactly what Urobuchi wanted. It's the turning point, as well as the main talking point that I see plenty of viewers bring up. My friend Liz suggested adding that it's polarizing to several viewers too. Such a drastic event that can lead to who knows where. Because after all, this is only episode 3 out of 12. I can understand the quote-unquote pretentiousness to this, but again, I feel like that doesn't take away from this specific instance. Yes, there are times where a death can be too much, and that shock value is cheap. Especially since this isn't the last time Madoka Magica, let alone Gen Urobuchi, pulls this stunt. However, I think it was done pretty well in this show. When I mentioned earlier how the labyrinths and abstractness of this world made me feel something, that something was despair. Yeah, I know I'm giving the show too much credit, but it's just how I feel. The gloominess of this world showed its true colors when it came to the labyrinths. And that was only the beginning. Episode 1 and 2 had this cutesy ending theme, but episode 3's ending really hits you. I'd say it's a bit too edgy, but I get it. This really isn't your typical magical girl show, but does that make it a good show in general? When I review media, one unspoken rule I have for myself is, being different doesn't automatically make something good. I can point to plenty of aspects in tokusatsu that try something different and don't hit the mark. But if that difference adds substance, then I'll certainly give it the praise it deserves. Maybe you've heard this phrase before. I remember seeing it on Twitter. It went something like, Madoka Magica is the best magical girl show for someone who hasn't seen magical girl shows. That was said in a negative connotation, as in how the show is overrated, especially when it gets praise from fans who don't know anything else within the genre. You've probably also heard how Madoka Magica is a deconstruction of magical girl shows. I think both of these statements are true, to a point. The deconstruction angle is certainly a real thing that Urobuchi was going for. What if magical girls were in a more realistic scenario where maybe they don't always save the day, and can actually die? The show does play with this idea as much as it can, even explaining how this can break the characters mentally. If Madoka Magica is still praised by people who don't watch other Magica shows, then shouldn't that mean there's value to this regardless? Yeah, of course. You can watch basically any season of Pretty Cure or Kamen Rider without knowing anything previous. So saying that Madoka gets overpraised by viewers of non-magical girl shows seems kinda sententious in its own way. But yeah, watching another show in the genre would help a lot in getting the point across with Madoka. Like how a parody can still be funny on its own, but you'll get way more out of it if you at least know of the source material. Madoka Magica is a good show, but you'll understand what it's trying to deconstruct if you've watched Sailor Moon, or at least know of the tropes. You can compare a lot of these shows with certain aspects, but one thing I absolutely don't like is when people say, wow, Madoka is just anime Ryuki, or Madoka and Gaim are the same show. I know it's an obvious joke, but like, come on. I put up a screenshot earlier of Madoka being compared to Ryuki. The first time I saw it, I didn't really get it, but okay. Then I saw it 100 more times after finishing Madoka and I just... ugh. Maybe I'm becoming a grumpy old man or something, I don't know. Maybe I've just seen Kamen Rider Amazons be compared to Tokyo Ghoul too many times. I want to bring up how Madoka is seen as this super dark tragedy, but other shows like Sailor Moon, and even Pretty Cure, can have some mature themes too. The difference being in that Madoka is an entire show built around this deconstruction. The following episodes focus on Sayaka and Madoka trying to cope with life after learning how dangerous transforming can be. They continue telling Kyubey that they don't want to become magical girls, then a certain something happens that changes their lives even further. Mami's death is what most people point towards as the biggest twist in the show, but to me, the biggest twist comes in episode 6. Magical girls are given soul gems. Kyubey tells them that it's where their powers are, so after a run-in with another magical girl named Kyoko, Madoka throws away a soul gem, turning Sayaka into a husk. The soul gems do have power, but it's also where a magical girl's soul is stored. Their natural bodies are just shells. This is a great idea. I absolutely love it. But what impacts me more is what comes after. It was bad enough learning how dangerous having powers can be, but more and more is added on top of that. To certain magical girls, death is more like an escape. Yeah, here returns the edginess, though not unwarranted. This isn't even bringing up personal stakes to each girl, and the world that constantly moves on no matter what. One of my favorite episodes in Madoka is episode 10, which shows Homoda's entire backstory. That I won't explain here because I want you to watch it for yourself. However, I've been waiting months to talk about this certain shot. It's the end of the world. Homoda has done everything she can to save Madoka. Then we see this giant wall. Except, it's no simple object. It's Madoka herself. This is probably one of the most beautiful scenes I've experienced. Maybe that doesn't mean much when I don't normally watch anime, but it's still beautiful to me. You might have thought it just spoiled it in its entirety, but it's a very, very, very minor part of the episode. Watch for yourself and see how it all plays out. That goes for the whole show. Please, please watch it. This might be a controversial opinion, but I really like Madoka Magica. I couldn't stop watching. binging it the whole day and finishing it at like 5 in the morning. Like I said earlier, it's a story of despair but with a shimmer of hope. After watching, I understood Gen Urobuchi a bit more and got the whole Urobutcher thing. Which, by the way, is one of the most hilarious nicknames I've heard. Honestly, this might have made me appreciate Gaim more too. I love Madoka's characters, art, music, and most of all, its story. Of course, it's not perfect. I actually think the pacing can be abysmal at points, and some characters have me scratch my head. Though in the end, I actually wouldn't hesitate in calling Puella Magi Madoka Magica a masterpiece. I think that's the third show I gave this rating to, and to me, it's well deserved. Now if you excuse me, I have to continue my Urobuchi journey with Kamen Rider Gaim. By the way, I think Rebellion is better than the whole show, don't at me.